We wanted to pull off our first rock show. Up until that point, VSQ had numerous performances, but had not played a concert in a rock venue. We didn't know if fans would learn about the show, if they would come out, if what we do musically would work in that setting.
VSQ was the first time I'd met these guys and got to play with these guys, and I'm really glad it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too.
The biggest challenge with the Troubadour show was a challenge that we have with a lot of VSQ performances. The series draws from a rotating cast of amazing players, but some of whom have never played with one another. So when there's a show, depending on the group, we have a week of rehearsals, really, to become a band. The players have to learn the repertoire, learn it deeply, get to know each other's body language, develop a chemistry, take direction from the week about how we're staging it and how the show is flowing. It's really a tall order, but these guys did an amazing job.
That was the first time I'd ever done a string quartet gig like that, where the audience is standing and it's packed, and we are not there to just perform pieces of music necessarily for an appreciative audience, but to entertain. And in a string quartet setting, I feel like that was maybe one of the first times I'd done that.
The biggest challenge, I'd say the first one was the creation of the set list. Just because of the sheer size of VSQ's catalog. It's like a little history of rock and roll. And so where do we start? And the choices we make to create a sensual arc and a cohesion to the show is hard, because you have to let out a lot of beautiful music. And so that was the first step. Then it's a little bit of the same with the musicians. We go through we didn't have a lot of time, so we go through a very hard and strenuous rehearsal process with them. They have long hours. They have to, because we're working on chemistry, we're working on staging, we're working on memorization, and we're working with a pool of musicians, which are all awesome and great for different reasons. But we have, for that specific show or for those specific songs, to figure out the best chemistry between musicians or between musician and the songs. This is not something that's easiest to me, but that we have to make happen so that we can end up with the 4 right musicians for that particular show, and having to put them through that. And because this is at the end of it, after those long hours, that we get to the real stuff, to create the chemistry. They did an awesome job at that, and so it's putting them through that is not the most enjoyable part of what I'm doing.
I think we were perfect, actually.
Perfect, exactly.
We were
No
perfect. No
mistakes.
mistakes. It didn't seem to me like a challenge. It just seemed like a journey more than a challenge. It was more like, how are we going to get there? Not what do we have to overcome, sort of.
Yeah, I felt like there was, like you said, there was quite a journey to get from the very beginning to where we ended, and to me, it was amazing to see how far we'd come. Some of the rehearsal schedules were brutal and very long and taxing, and the way I play very hard and intense, and it's taxing for me. So I had to learn how to pace myself physically to get through that whole week or two, and but actually the performance, all that hard work had totally paid off, because when we got to the show, everything just happened and clicked naturally. I didn't have to think about anything. And
I mean, as the A&R rep, my contribution, of course, was the music. I worked with Leo, the musical director, and Loic, the artistic stage director, coming up with the set list and kind of helping them frame the narrative of the show. But the biggest contribution to that was the inclusion of My Immortal. my impression of VSQ, my favorite thing about VSQ is the romantic side of it. There's a lot of different aspects to VSQ. Everybody's got a different reason why they like VSQ. Some people like the irony of it. Some people take it for more practical things. You know, it's wedding music, it's study music. I like the romantic nature of it, and to me, My Immortal was like a centerpiece for that kind of moment. With regards to the final album release, I worked with Paul Dugray, who for the longest time was the mastering engineer for all things at CMH, but specifically he worked with VSQ on the studio stuff, doing all the mastering. But he has a background in live music, so we hired him to do the sound engineer stuff. He recorded the show. Once the show was all recorded, a couple months later, we met up, reviewed the material, and basically kind of manipulated it into a live document. We sat down, listened to the entire recording of the show, figured out what didn't work. There were a couple songs that, while they were great live, just didn't work as well on tape, so they wound up not making the cut. We also cut the encore because the encore was a song we'd already played, so it was just a repeat. That doesn't work, so we cut that out. But we also worked trying to make the transitions between tracks a little bit more, just to flow a little better. We cut out unnecessary banter, the musicians tuning up their instruments. We cut that stuff out. We just made it a tighter package.